Might as well do it anyway. FarrCast, Season 8, Episode 31.
That could be the title. Might as well do it anyway.
Okay, we're good in 3, 2. Welcome to the FarrCast, providing you insight into Wall Street, Washington, and the world. And now here's your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome to the FarrCast. I am Michael Farr. Thanks so much for joining us again this week. It is the 17th day of April as we're recording, 2 days after tax day. Are you feeling poorer? I am. And the stock market portfolio balance and the 401k aren't helping a whole lot either. Let's take a quick review. Yesterday, Fed Chairman Jay Powell spoke at the Chicago Economic Club luncheon, and he told everybody exactly what they already knew: that tariffs were presenting headwinds and uncertainty, that those would drive prices higher at a time when they'd had inflation coming lower, that to cut rates now made no sense to him. He was in wait-and-see mode for quite a while. Even though the economy might be slowing, inflation may be rising. That puts the Fed in a very difficult position. Everybody knew that, and yet markets went down about 700 points. And as they thought about it, futures have now gone down about another 600 points. I'm talking about the Dow here. 700 yesterday, 1.175% or so, down another 1.5% this morning, largely on an earnings report from United Healthcare. Largely on that. That's driving the Dow down this morning. NASDAQ futures and S&P futures are higher, showing a bit of a bounce. And Eli Lilly has another GLP-1 drug, this weight loss drug, diabetes drug, in the form of a pill that is proving effective in trials with patients. Not as effective as everybody wants, but the prospect of a pill seems to be driving those shares higher this morning. Both of those things are neither recommendations to buy or sell, folks. Please don't get excited. 10-year Treasury, as we go through all of this, is 4.3%. That's about where we were 2 months ago. That's been a pretty stable level. The dollar is weaker. Oil is a lot weaker at $63. Gold is higher, $3,350 an ounce. I mean, is the neighborhood for gold right now. Wow. And cryptos in general are a good deal lower, the cryptocurrencies. I was reading last night and listening to my friend Leland Vittert at News Nation. He is a bit of a right-of-center commentator, but he has a keen way of cutting right through it. And he says, look, last night, this was Vittert's line. We'll ask Mahaffee. Americans elected President Trump for 3 reasons: the border, the economy, and the issue of boys and girls sports, or vice versa, but mostly boys and girls sports. I laughed when he was telling me, when I heard him say it, because I thought those are the 3 reasons we elected the president of the United States. The great part about that from Vittert was he said, look, of those 3 issues of immigration, of the economy, and boys and girls sports, let's forget the third one, immigration's going well. That's what Trump has addressed very well. It's the economy, it's the tariffs, it's the collapse, it's the self-inflicted error here that's really having everybody all upset. So what are the Democrats focused on? The Democrats are focused on the immigration. This guy who was sent to El Salvador inappropriately, Democratic congressmen are heading down there, and it's great. Chris Van Hollen went. Other senators are going to go, and they're going to focus on the immigration issue, not the economy issue. Even though the stock market, 2 days in a row here, we're putting together 1,300 points down on the economy. I got a call yesterday saying, Farr, why shouldn't we sell our bond portfolio? Rates have to go higher. Therefore, our bond portfolio should show losses. I said, we've got a decent rate of return from our bond portfolio, number one. Number two, when we hold our individual bonds to maturity, we get paid our principal back, and we have a high quality portfolio. I believe we have very little principal risk in this portfolio. And number three, if the president fires the Fed chairman and appoints his own version of Arthur Burns and they take rates down to 2%, your bond portfolio is going to spike up. That won't happen, he said. I said, oh, really? Let's go through the list of things you would have told me 2 months ago wouldn't happen that have happened. In this business that I have been in for almost 40 years now, I've learned that I can't say that about anything, folks, that won't happen. On my worst day, I have to say, well, it might happen. Even the craziest stuff might happen. So how do you invest at a period like that? Now, I've started, ladies and gentlemen, to give you my quick view of what's going on. Before we came on, Jim Lebenthal was giving us his quick view of what's going on. One of the tough things about being on TV is they ask you very specific questions, and they want specific questions and specific answers, and they want you to be right or wrong. And actually, they really want you to be right. And every time you're wrong, you're really not allowed to be wrong. They will come in and just tear you up over and over again. If you're wrong too much, they fire you. But usually they just kind of get sick of you. Lebenthal has a very interesting view. So I'm going to shut up now and rather go back and forth. Listen to this statement from Jim. Good morning, Jim.
Michael, good morning. It's great to talk to you. I think I'll dive into the serious content. You and I can do our colloquialisms later, but here's where we are. You and I are in the business of advising our clients on how to invest for the future. And to say that things are uncertain right now is an understatement. There is no way to know what will come next from this administration and how it will impact the markets. And what you have to understand about the markets right now is there is this incredible tension between good topics and bad topics, positive catalysts and negative catalysts. And you see it in just about every area that affects the markets. If you look at the economy, here's what I mean. Economic indicators show that going into this mess, the economy has been on strong footing. Whether you look at retail sales, weekly jobless claims, inflation, the inflation reports from last week were really quite benign. By every indication, the economy has been quite strong. But that is in tension with the fact that it can turn down in a moment, and frankly will if this uncertainty lasts. That's the sort of tension I'm talking about. We see it in corporate profits, where right now, only 10% of the way through the first quarter earnings season, profits have been pretty good. If you look at the banks, if you look at the airlines, they've been pretty good. But nobody expects that to last going through the rest of 2025, again, in this uncertain environment that we're in. I mean, the tension, you mentioned the Fed, right? If we weren't going through this tariff morass, we would have a Fed that would be eager to cut rates right now, given the inflation numbers. And the Fed funds futures market still sees 3 cuts coming up. However, that's in tension. It's in tension with what Chairman Powell said yesterday and the likely inflationary impact of tariffs. Now, what do you do with this tension? What do you do with this yin and yang, which is being reflected highly in the stock market, right? Last week, just 4 tradings ago, we were coming off of a week in which the S&P 500 was up about 5.7%. This week, we're down 2%. And I think that there is an answer that you have to embrace with your heart as well as your mind. And it's this, that in the long arc of history, there have been plenty of moments of tension like this, and it ends up through that long, centuries-long arc of history that there are more good days than bad days. I am not saying that the market can't go down from here. Of course it can go down. Maybe it does go down because none of us know what the next catalyst, what the next tweet, what the next announcement is going to be. Maybe we're going to raise tariffs more. Maybe we're going to get a deal with Japan. Nobody knows. So what you have to do with your mind and your heart is embrace the long arc of history that says we go higher over time from here. It's just a question of how long the recovery takes. And to give just one more ounce of encouragement here, I will note that I'm saying with the S&P 500 off 15% over the last 2 months. I'm not saying this at the high. I'm giving you encouragement in the darkest days when it matters and when it needs to be reminded to all of us, you and me included, Michael. That's
You know,
that's
the
my
thing,
spiel for today.
it's a great spiel. And the thing you said, Jim, when we were talking earlier is while it's down 15%, are you a better buyer or a seller? It's down 15%. It might go down 20%. The discipline for every investor is to buy low, buy low. It's down 15%. If you have money on the sidelines, you start to put it to work. Well, it's going to go lower. Yeah, it probably will. And then you put a little more money to work. But any period you've done this over history, over the history of these downturns, it always feels awful when you're doing the best thing you can do. When you're selling at the top and it feels awful, and I can't believe it, it's going to go up more. And I know I've made a lot of money. I know I've made a lot of money, but it's still going up. Why is it still going up? I don't know. Is it's expensive? I know it's expensive. It's been expensive for months now, but it's still going up. And I don't want to get out yet. I love this ride. This feels great. As soon as you tell yourself and hear yourself saying over and over again that you really can't come up with good, hard reasons, but it just feels good, do the opposite. Walk the other way immediately, quickly as you can. If you don't want to run, at least lighten up on half your position at the tops and you start buying in when the thing gets low. And it's hard to do. And this could go on for a year and you'll be cursing Farr and Lebenthal going, those jackasses told me to get invested and I did. And look at where I am. Just wait. We're not giving you advice for 6 months, and we're not giving you advice for 18 months. We're telling you how we've made money doing this over our careers and how we've watched others do it over their lifetimes. Jim, go ahead from right there. What did I miss?
I've got to repeat your punchline. It's so important. The moment that you're supposed to buy is the moment that it feels the least like you are supposed to buy.
Yes.
It's so important. That is the punchline. And I want everyone listening to consider last Wednesday as I don't even remember. What was the S&P 500 up 8%, the NASDAQ up
Yeah.
12%?
Yeah.
Remember this. That was after 4 days in which we had declined, I don't remember, 12%? I
Yeah.
mean, some ungodly number. It did
Yeah.
not feel like the time to buy. History shows that those incredible good days are remarkably clustered around the bad days. Now, we've said that, Michael, you and I have said that for years. We've said it
Sure.
on the FarrCast season after season. We just lived through it. And I'm making this point with emphasis because everybody listening just lived through it. April 2nd was Liberation Day. April 3rd and 4th, the markets were down about 10%. 3 days later, if you had not bought, you missed being up, whatever I said it was, 8% in a day on the S&P 500. Now, I get it. I get it. Somebody's listening saying, yeah, but I wrote it down. My main point here is if you're trying to time the market, you are more likely to get it wrong because, as Michael just said, you have to buy when it feels the least like you're supposed to buy.
Yep. And you've got to give the companies in which you're invested, time to perform through different market cycles. And right now, we're at a very odd time, ladies and gentlemen. The president and the administration have lifted tariffs on a lot of the electronics and chips. In effect, they are, through policy, picking winners and losers. Picking winners and losers. Apparel companies that import clothing, they don't get a break on it. Procter and Gamble, for instance, a big consumer company. A lot of these companies are not getting breaks. The autos are not getting breaks. A lot of others are not getting breaks, and they're going to suffer from the higher prices. So it's very difficult with a strategy, a fiscal policy strategy that seems to be getting made up as we go, as this war continues, and wars we know are messy. But just because something's working today doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow, or that it's not working today doesn't mean that it won't work tomorrow. In the fish market, we say ignore the yelling and the screaming and pay attention to the price of fish. Look at the numbers. Rely on the numbers and give yourself time to be right. Give yourself the time to be right. So we've been very high level today, Jim. I don't mind any of it. Frankly, I'm willing to leave it there. If you have some final advice to Fred and Ethel, my friend Capani tells me that we haven't talked to Fred and Ethel in a while. He misses them.
Yeah, I think we should keep it high level. I don't want to bury the important points here. And the important points are don't time the markets, be in quality investments that can get through any storm that the world brings. And remember that when you have down days, it's hard to remember that good catalysts can come. And vice versa, when you have good days, it can feel like, well, where's the bad news going to come from? Just remember that there is tension, there is balance, there is yin and yang. And in that balance, there is a positive return on equities over time. It's an undeniable, unassailable truth.
There are companies out there that will get it right, that will continue to make money, and you're going to want to own a piece of them over the next 10 years. Well, and if you're not, then you sell and you don't do this anymore. But if you're going to keep doing it, in my opinion and in Lebenthal's opinion, that's how you do it. We're going to be right back with Dan Mahaffee. Jim Lebenthal from Sarity Partners. You're the best. Thanks so much for being with us.
Michael, you bring out the best in me. Thank you.
Michael Farr and the FarrCast are proud to support Heroes, Inc. Heroes supports the spouses and children of law enforcement officers and firefighters who gave their lives in the line of duty to the greater Washington, D.C. community. Their singular goal is to honor the supreme sacrifice made by these individuals by caring for their families. Heroes' work begins within 24 hours of the tragic loss and continues indefinitely. We invite you to learn more about Heroes' mission at heroes.org. We hope that you will consider supporting Heroes as they endeavor to honor those who protect us. That's heroes.org. Heroes, here for you, here for good. And now, back to the FarrCast and your host, Michael Farr. Thanks for being with us this week. Now it's time to go to our political analyst, Dan Mahaffee, and your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. I'm Michael Farr. Joining me now, Dan Mahaffee, president of the Dr. Scholl Foundation, scholar at the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress, a Washington, D.C. think tank, and the senior political analyst on the FarrCast. Welcome back, Dan.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be talking with you as always.
As always, pal, Congress is going on break, on the Easter break. It's a 2-week break. They're going home. They're having town halls if they can't avoid them, and they're getting pilloried, lambasted, ridiculed, yelled at, and held accountable for tariffs and economy and everything else. Tell us what effect this break is going to have on Congress. What do they bring back to Washington with them? And will it have any effect on what the administration is doing and policies going forward, including the tax cuts that President Trump wants?
Yeah. No, I think good questions, Michael. One, I think the outbursts of emotion you see at some of these town halls will lead more of them to members of Congress, that is, will lead more of them to avoid these town halls, try and do virtual type things because there is significant voter anger out there. And what I also think you see beyond the town halls is in the latest consumer sentiment surveys, if you break them down, you no longer see that partisan bifurcation in consumer sentiment. Now it's a bipartisan collapse in consumer sentiment. And that is a message to the members of Congress, along with these town halls, that the economic pain, the economic uncertainty is being felt by all, not just projecting our economic sentiment onto the political environment of the time. So that's one switch we've seen, I think, that would have them concerned in the data. And ultimately, as you see this anger, I think it does, for them at least, a sense of needing to accelerate the goals of these tax packages, getting through the budget plans. But at the end of the day, while they're away from Washington, none of the stuff is getting resolved on how that will be paid for and what has to be cut. I think that's going to drive a lot of the anger in the communities as these cuts become further discussed to programs like education, Medicaid, other programs people have. And then in Washington, more and more difficult to answer these questions. Senators balking at the idea of a higher tax rate that the House, for example, wants to pay for these packages. So you have these a sense of anger growing, and I think that will mean a sense of urgency in getting things done. But this lack of working time for these 2 weeks makes it harder to at least come to some of those answers, although I'm sure staffers are working hard while their bosses are away on these different proposals and plans to keep moving forward.
For all of the people who strongly support everything that President Trump is doing now and most everything that comes out of his administration, it still seems that there is an erosion of the president's political capital over the last 30 or 45 days, given tariffs, given foreign policy things and others. Maybe not with his base, particularly on foreign policy, but everybody's getting hit by tariffs. When Congress comes back, will the president still have enough political capital to get this tax cut done?
Oh, I believe he does. I think also because it's the main, as we've discussed, the main political vehicle and political goal for the Republican Party, the House agenda right now. If they don't get this bill passed with control of the House and Senate, they probably never will. And if they look at the midterm trends and things like that, this is a now or never, not just for Trump, but for the Republicans in Washington. So
What
I think
about
his
the five Republicans who are already saying I can't vote for this because it adds $7 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years. I'm going to be held accountable for that a lot longer than the president's next midterm election. And I'm digging in and saying, no, it doesn't take many to stop this, does it, Dan?
Oh no, the math is still there that only a few will be able to throw a wrench into this. But I ultimately think, given the pressure, and as we saw on the last one, they find ways to make the math work for just enough of them to get this through. This is how they have to if they want to get anything done. Now, the pathway where this doesn't happen, and you still have the tariffs and the economic uncertainty, and we have tax rates go up, you also face just a economic fiscal policy disaster if you have that as well. Truly a recession if you have both the effect of tariffs hitting and taxes going back up to the rates if these cuts aren't extended. So there's the economic argument, the political argument, and I think that's where you see President Trump, having more of a political runway and political capital, at least on that, than you do on some of the things like foreign policy, immigration, and et cetera, because we're approaching the 100-day mark in his second term. And that's when people tend to say, okay, are we seeing things, are these promises being kept? Deportations is one of them, but are we seeing the war in Ukraine over so quickly like he promised? The Middle East at peace or Gaza redeveloped? Those things are taking time. And combined with the promises on manufacturing and economic growth, which will also take time, it's a question of whether the political capital can endure a combination of over-promising and under-delivering.
To paraphrase an old political saw, folks, are you better off now than you were 4 months ago? It doesn't mean whether you liked your government or not, but when you ask Fred and Ethel in the grocery store, hey, how do you like those prices? Well, how's your 401k doing? How's your retirement plan going? How do you feel? Are you thinking about buying a new car? Have you seen what it's going to cost you? All of those questions for the MOS, as we say in the media industry. The MOS is the man on the street. You want an MOS interview. That's what they tell you to go out and do. Can you go get me an MOS interview? Man on the street interview. How's the man on the street feeling? And will they deliver a message severe enough to their elected representatives that they begin to lean back into the administration's agenda?
Look, I think the man on the street won't really be able to do that until the midterm. So for the Republicans now, it's about maintaining discipline and momentum in light of the voter anger. And I think that's accelerating their agenda plan.
And
But
you
what
think
you
they're
see,
going to do it? You think they're going to do? You think they'll be able to maintain it? You think they're going to get it through?
they do because the alternative is nothing.
Okay. The alternative is nothing. Speaking of nothing, Leland Vittert yesterday said that the president ran on three basic tenets: one, immigration; two, the economy; and three, not letting boys participate in girls' sports. I thought it was kind of funny, but the boys and girls sports thing was actually a plank in the president's campaign. But I suppose it was in there somewhere, and it appealed to a significant group. Anyway,
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I'd subsume it as a broader culture war plank, but go on.
yeah, there's certainly a
Win the
culture
culture war type argument, but go on. Yeah.
when the culture war. I'm not sure exactly that I understand what the culture war is, as we've discussed before, vis-a-vis the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian and the National Zoo. But let's not take time for the culture war right now. So, with great success on immigration and great problems with the economy and stock markets and everything else, the Democrats are choosing to focus on immigration, which is the thing he can claim greatest success about. Why are the Democrats doing this? It just seems to be moronic.
I think Democrats' strategy is one, let the economic policies of the administration speak for themselves when it comes to their failure. James Carville's advice there was roll over, play dead, and just let the public feel the pain of Trump's policies. On immigration, you say going after this. I think it's a lesson from the first administration, though. Look at polling. You see the top line question, of course. Do you want to get rid of illegal immigrants and secure the borders? Yes, resoundingly popular. That's a very easy yes, and that both parties will say that. When you get down into the details, though, and look, the administration is trying to get these deportations going. They're trying to move there. In the first term, when we had the imagery and the saying kids in cages, family separation, stuff like that, those stories started to get out. That really weighed on the administration's policies among independents and swing voters. You also have, too, these stories coming out, and this is where you have the people say, look, I want the illegal immigrants deported, but, not my neighbor. He's fine. Not the gal overstaying her student visa dating my nephew. We don't want to see those folks deported. We want the bad ones gone. Well, the administration is kind of sweeping up everyone right now. And that story, along with, frankly, what we hear with these cases in the man deported to El Salvador. And look, if kids in cages didn't appeal to independents, neither will we will disappear you anytime, anywhere as an immigration policy either. So, look, you're seeing that where even, for example, Joe Rogan and Ann Coulter are starting to critique the administration on some of these deportations without due process hearings. So all of that immigration, while the headline might suggest, oh, people are behind this, I think you start to see more cracks in that from the lessons of the first administration, as well as, frankly, of what we're seeing the headlines of overreach and, frankly, dystopian authoritarian type language being employed by President Trump and others right in the Oval Office.
Folks, if you haven't read 1984, please read it. Please. And if you haven't read it since you were in school, please read it. And if you can make it through half the book without a stiff drink, I want you to call me personally and let me know how you did it, because I found it absolutely impossible. And I don't mean just one drink. All right, Dan, 1984, George Orwell. Read it. Read it. Be informed. Read it, please. All right, Dan. We're watching now. The story of the day is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. What? Why is this the story of the day? Why is this captivating so many headlines when there's so much else to talk about? My heart is absolutely broken for any injustice that is committed against anyone. I got it. Please. But there are 16 more stories of justice run amok that media and politicians could be focusing on that they're not. So why this one, Dan?
Well, I think because this one is the administration saying that you can be, an individual can be sent to another country, deported, and without a hearing of any kind or due process, he could be sent to another country. And in this case, where A court is saying to bring him back. Basically, the administration is thumbing their nose at the court, and I think this is rising to a initial confrontation between this administration and the judiciary on what authorities the administration can use and whether the judiciary has the power fundamentally on a constitutional basis to compel the executive to do things it does not want to do.
Do they?
That's a very good question that we have not resolved since Andrew Jackson up to this day.
How does it get resolved now, Dan? How does this play out? I think it's probably one of the most important things going on, perhaps that has gone on in the history of our country, in recent history. If this rule of law somehow doesn't hold, then what else is reliable in our system and in our structure and in our regulatory and supervisory organizations that have provided transparency to the rest of the world, that affords our economy and our systems and our markets trust that we are reliable, that we will do what we say we're going to do, that we can't just change the rules when we want to, that here are the rules, everybody knows the rules, and the U.S. listens to the rules. That seems to be what's really at stake to me here. Am I missing something?
No, it's exactly what's at stake, and it's the principle that if the government can deprive you of your liberty, they can just as easily deprive you of your property, of your possessions, of your money. And I think it's a slope that this administration seems to want to push the rhetorical envelope on, wants to see what they can indeed get away with. And ultimately, the question is for those in Congress who have their role as a branch themselves. The question is, do they hold to their oaths to the Constitution and the statements they've made about the rule of law, or do they become lip service in fears of their own partisan future?
Lip service in turn in fear of their own partisan future. Uh, that sounds like a very scary discussion going on, and it sounds like the outcome will be critical to the future generations of Americans. I listened to an argument 2 days ago, actually, between a Republican and a Democrat, and the Democrat was criticizing President Trump, and then they looked at this friend of theirs who voted for President Trump and was a Republican and said, how did you vote for me? He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And the Republican who had voted for him said, I don't think any of us actually believed he'd go through with all of this stuff. It's just unbelievable. We thought he was just campaigning, and he's going through with all of this stuff. So I don't know if that's a turncoat Republican, if that makes him a bad Republican or not. And the Democrat just looked at him and said, "You're an idiot." And the Republican kind of chuckled and said, maybe so, maybe so. It was an interesting.
Well, now he's an idiot and a rhino.
Well, it's very interesting to hear people's conversations about politics, and it's wonderful not to participate. And Dan, let's wrap it up here, pal. So in the next couple or 3 weeks, let's go way into the jump forward future machine to, let's say, the first week of May. It's only a couple of weeks away, folks. Today's the 17th of April. First week of May here, a couple of weeks. Seems like a lifetime, really does. Congress will be back. Will they be in a different mood? We're going to have still the ongoing conversations with Ukraine and what's going on with Russia, which doesn't seem to be much. We've got trade wars on different fronts, and will there be progress made with China? What does the world and political landscape look like? How do you see it different in 3 weeks, Dan, from where we are right now?
Yeah, well, besides me dusting off my mint-julep glasses for the Derby at the beginning of May, look, the world is going to be dealing with these continued shocks to the system. I think you try and see negotiations unfold between us and our closest trading partners on the trade war front. I keep hearing Japan as the guinea pig is the phrase that, how the negotiations go with Japan. I'll be watching those as the bellwether. Within Washington on the Russia-Ukraine stuff, What voices are speaking to President Trump on this? I hear within the State Department, Defense Department, there are others growing tired of the delays from Russia, the stonewalling. How long does that, how long does that Putin hold out on that before Trump wants results? And how long can Putin keep this negotiator Steve Witkoff on the treadmill before Trump realizes that's what's happening there? So I think you see that, and in the Middle East, really coming down to the flashpoint type moments. And what basically happens, fascinating read for our listeners in this week's Financial Times on what the Israelis are doing, really carving out a security bubble of their own, and what that means for certain flashpoints, the prospects of an insurgency in Syria. Those are things I keep an eye on as well.
And anything on that whole list, what's keeping you awake at night, Dan?
I think, again, the Middle East side is what keeps me up, as well as ultimately domestically. We are in a weird moment where the administration clearly is pushing the bounds of this rule of law question. So as much looking abroad as at home.
The rule of law question certainly should be keeping more of us awake at night, I think. Dan Mahaffee, thank you so much for being with us again this week. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for another FarrCast. Before I go today, I want to wish each of you a very happy Easter. We've just gotten through Passover, and the happy Passover. I hope it's been a period of peace and reflection and family for all of you, and that will continue with you. I'm going to tell you one quick personal story. I had a professor in college, Dr. William T. Koch, English professor of mine, and a wonderful, wonderful guy from Demopolis, Alabama, had a fabulous accent. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was a favorite of mine. He was a favorite of many people at the University of the South, so I commissioned his portrait, which now hangs in the alumni house, and we dedicated it last fall at my 40th college reunion. After that, Willie was amazingly classical, stereotypical, almost a caricature of the Southern English professor in his bow ties, etc., and long drawl and reading glasses, if you can picture him with a couple of extra pounds as well. He was just great. He would, a great connoisseur of bourbon, and he had a sterling silver cup from which he drank his bourbon every night, insisted that it be chilled and the ice and he would go on and on about his cup. At a family party after the dedication of his portrait, his two sons, who are my age, presented me with that sterling silver cup that Willie used every night. And on Kentucky Derby Day, I assure you, it will have a mint julep in it, and I will raise it to my friend Willie and all my other great friends from the South. So I'll be joining you. Dan. That's it, folks. We'll be back next week to cover Wall Street, Washington, and the world. For everybody at Hightower, Farr Miller in Washington, my producer, Harry Jennings, thank you for listening. Please share us on your social media. In Naples, Florida, happy Easter. I'm Michael Farr.
Thanks for listening in to this week's FarrCast, and thanks to our guests, Jim Lebenthal and Dan Mahaffee. The FarrCast is produced by Michael Farr and Harry Jennings and comes to you weekly for free on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, TuneIn, and Apple Podcasts. Please be aware that anytime we or any of our guests mention a specific company, sector, or refer to performance in relation to an earnings report, news headline, or economic trend, it is not a recommendation to buy or sell. Review the risks and rewards of any investment with your financial advisor for what specific investment and long-term strategy is appropriate for you before you make any investment decision. And if we can be of assistance here at Farr Miller in Washington, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at hjennings@farrmiller.com. We are here to help, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with one of our investment professionals to help you navigate your financial course across the changing investing environment. We are grateful for all of your notes and comments, and we try to respond to as many as we can. Please keep the emails and messages coming. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, take care, stay safe, stay healthy. I'm producer Harry Jennings, and thank you for listening to the FarrCast, Wall Street, Washington, and the world. Farr, Miller & Washington is a group comprised of investment professionals registered with Hightower Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Some investment professionals may also be registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. All information referenced herein is from sources believed to be reliable. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC have not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of the information contained in this podcast. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates make no representations or warranties, expressed or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information or for statements or errors or omissions or results obtained from the use of this information. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates assume no liability for any action made or taken in reliance on or relating in any way to the information. This podcast and the materials contained herein were created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of the authors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented in any way to any entity as tax or legal advice. Clients are urged to consult their tax and/or legal advisors for related questions.